Hello everyone, and welcome to a brand new Let's Play of Victoria 2 with the Grand Combination mod as the Ottoman Empire. After our successful Europa Universalis 4 journey, even if it ended very abruptly, it's time to dive into a new era. One that marks the beginning of a long and painful decline for the once mighty Ottomans. This is the next chapter in our grand campaign, where we shift from the heights of the imperial glory to the struggle for survival. In Victoria 2, we'll explore the period from 1846 to 1945, a time when the Ottoman Empire is known as the sick man of Europe. Our mission? To rewrite history, stave off decline, and restore some semblance of the empire's former power and prestige. The real-world Ottomans faced rising nationalist movements, relentless encroachment by other great powers, and internal decay, eventually to be consumed and destroyed by the horrors of the First World War. By 1846, the empire was already a shadow of its former self. The Greek War of Independence, 1821 through 1830, had dealt it a significant blow, and the nationalist aspirations were rising among Serbs, Bulgarians, and other major ethnic groups. The Tanzimat reforms, beginning in 1839, were the Ottomans' attempt to modernize and centralize, inspired by European models. While these reforms aimed to revitalize the military, economy, and legal systems of the Ottoman Empire, they often met with resistance from conservative factions within the empire itself, and were insufficient to counterbalance the pressures of external threats and internal division the Sultan faced. One of the most critical moments in the 19th century was the Crimean War, 1853 through 1856, where the Ottomans, supported by Britain and France, fought against the Russian Empire. This war temporarily stemmed Russia's advance, but exposed the empire's deep military weakness. The war ended with the Treaty of Paris, which reaffirmed the Ottoman sovereignty, but did little to halt the empire's disintegration. Later in the century, the empire faced further territorial losses. The Balkan Wars of 1912 through 1913 were truly catastrophic, stripping the Ottomans of nearly all their European territories except for a small foothold around Istanbul. It is worth noting that we are actually going to face this in the Hearts of Iron campaign during the World War I, because it starts with this exact time period. These defeats, with other issues the Ottomans faced, highlighted the empire's inability to manage rising nationalist movements and repel foreign aggressions. Internally, the Ottomans grappled with significant challenges as well. The 1876 constitution and the brief period of constitutional monarchy under Sultan Abdul Hamid II gave hope for political reform, but it was very short-lived. Abdul Hamid soon suspended the constitution and ruled autocratically, earning the nickname the Red Sultan for his repressive policies, particularly against Armenians. As we will approach the 20th century in our playthrough, we'll contend with the empire's involvement in World War I or whatever kind of situation we will face in the game as a variant of this big conflict, because the later part of the game usually involves all of the great powers in major conflicts. Sooner or later it's going to happen. In the real history, the conflict that sealed the fate of the Ottomans was the actual World War I, because they aligned with the Central Powers, which led to a significant military defeat and the eventual partitioning of all of their territories under the Treaty of Sèvres in 1920. The treaty dismembered the empire, with large swaths of land ceded to allied powers and the new nations emerging from its remains. It is worth noting that the newly formed Turkish Republic actually rejected the Treaty of Sèvres and regained part of the territories, mostly Anatolia and the bordering regions, but it never regained the territories we will see on the map in our playthrough. As you can see, the history of the Ottomans was not great and their downfall was very painful. However, in this playthrough, we'll try to avoid it. We'll navigate the reforms, suppress uprisings, and manage our international diplomacy with other great powers so that we can keep an eye on them and their ambitions. By making strategic alliances with our neighbors, I'm hoping that we can stave off any enemy, and by modernizing our military and fostering our internal unity through assimilation and repressions, we'll try to restore the empire's strength and influence. Or we'll maintain it, in its diminished form. Or, at the very least, we'll try to slow the decline. As for the game itself, I'm running Victoria 2 with the Grand Combination mod, or TGN for short, version 2.3.4. If you're unfamiliar with it, don't worry, I'm not that much familiar with it myself. I used to do Let's Plays using the Pop Demand mod, but that one has been discontinued over 4 years ago. Currently, there's a couple of major mods for Victoria 2 being still developed. They all vastly surpassed the Pop Demand mod in, every single conceivable way. And while I have only cursory understanding of what each of these mods contain, TGN always seems the best one for me, even if it seems to be a little bit of an underdog. I tested it and it seems to be very stable, offers a huge amount of extra content like new pop types, buildings, new map with thousands of extra provinces, reworked major events and hundreds of new nations. The list goes on, so let's try it together. As a reminder, once this campaign concludes, we'll transition to Hearts of Iron 4 using the Great War mod. I already hinted on that during the history overview, where we'll steer the Ottoman Empire through this World War I. This will give us a unique opportunity to carry our legacy forward, or fail trying to do so. Which is more likely, because the Ottomans start in a probably the worst possible shape in the Great War mod, so we'll see. Now, with all of that said, let's get on with this monumental task. The road ahead will be tough, but I believe that with careful strategy and a bit of luck, we might just restore the Ottomans to their rightful place on the world stage, or at least keep them in the great power club where they start. This episode will be mostly about the setup, as usual, and the plans for this Let's Play, so if that's not your cup of tea, skip to the next episode. Otherwise, all I can say is, let's go! Alright, now that we have the introduction done, let's start with the actual game setup, which is gonna be very easy. However, there is still a lot to cover, so bear with me. I don't know exactly where to start because it's all connected, So let us start by looking at the politics, more precisely at the decisions. Now, the mod adds a ton of decisions. We're not gonna go through them that much at this point. I'm just gonna show them off so you guys know what we have ahead of ourselves. But I'm mostly interested in telling you about the TGC setup and the utility menus. These give a lot of additional options, but I'm keeping all of them on default because I don't want to mess with it too much. There is one that I consider turning on, which is the additional events for communist socialist countries, but it states that it's unbalanced and I'd rather not deal with any more crashes or weirdness after what happened with the Mayo and Taxes playthrough. So if you know what the TGC setup is and what the utility menus are, I'm not touching those at all. I went through them, I checked all of them, and I'm keeping them on default. Now, when it comes to our political situation, or political setup, you can see here that we have no reforms passed, with the only exception that the upper house of our parliament is appointed, which in my opinion is not all that bad, because it actually allows us to do what I'm gonna do next, and that is to change our ruling party. It's also worth mentioning that we have child labor legal and slavery allowed. There's not that many nations at this period that still have slavery on. I'm not entirely sure if we're gonna try to abolish it or freedom of womb, We'll see. We'll see what the situation is going to be like. And when I say we'll see, I'm saying that because I actually do want to go with Nizami Alam, which is a reactionary party for most of this playthrough. I've been always going with liberal or at worst conservative playthroughs. And I think in this one we're going to go straight up reactionary. I mean, it fits with the tone of the Let's Play and the situation that we are in. So when you look at the reactionary party for the Ottoman Empire, they have a protectionist trade policy, they have state capitalism economic policy, they have moralism as religion policy, they have residency as their citizenship policy, jingoism is their war policy, and welfare policy, no official. But no official is with all of them. There's not that many differences between the parties as you would expect in the Ottoman Empire, but there is still some major ones. So just so you know, we're going with the reactionary party. I actually found out that the Nizami Alem is a political movement in the Ottoman Empire. I have a couple of articles about this view, so I'm gonna read them during the playthrough and I'm gonna let you know what I'll find out. So far I didn't actually have the time because it's kind of excessive. It's dozens of pages, so I plan to do it when I'm on a business trip or flying somewhere to see if I can make heads or tails of it, because it's it's a venture into a political philosophy of the 19th century. So anyway, we're gonna go with Nizami Alam for now, which changes a little bit of our political outlook. We have no movements currently available, and we have a lot of nations that we could release, but we're not gonna. So that covers the political philosophy of our empire. Now, what is a little bit of a complication for those of you that don't know much about the history of the Ottoman Empire, a large part of our empire is actually not our own territory, but it falls into our dominion of Egypt, which historically risen up against the Ottomans. I think I mentioned that during the introduction. I recorded that one yesterday, so I'm not entirely sure how much into detail or how much about it I mentioned, but historically the Egyptian uprising was very successful and threatened to actually overthrow the Ottomans. So it required an international intervention to suppress. So I'm hoping we're going to be able to, if not avoid it, then suppress it on our own. Diplomatically though, we're starting at war with two of the nations, Tripoli and Soran. And we'll need to deal with that right at the very beginning, because these nations, I mean, when we win against Soran and Tripoli, there's going to be different outcomes for it. Soran is going to become a puppet, while Tripoli is going to be annexed. Again, they're not going to be problematic, but they point to a little bit of a difficulty that we have right now. We do have a ton of nations in our sphere, most of these being uncivilized nations, so it's going to be really hard for us to manage them effectively and make sure that none of them fall off. We, however, for example, don't have Greece in our sphere of influence, so that is one thing that we will need to deal with. Now, we could justify a war against them and puppet them or annex them, but I think we're not going to do that because we'll have a lot of our own problems to deal with, like unruly satellites and uprisings. But Greece should definitely, if not a puppet, become a satellite. Now, there is major differences between puppets and nations in your spheres. Actually, the satellite is a puppet. I should probably get my wording in order. So if you puppet someone, they become a puppet in all that it carries. They have no policy, they are allied to you, they join your wars, and they are basically, for all intents and purposes, parts of your empire with a certain level of autonomy. The nations in your sphere, like for example Serbia, are a little bit different. You can and you probably will have a lot of, okay, not Serbia for example, but under normal circumstances you can form an alliance with your puppets. They become part of your, sorry, not puppets, your sphere members. Again, I have to put my naming in order. So if someone becomes a part of your sphere, they effectively become part of your internal market. They will never join a war against you, but they are not under any obligation to join any offensive wars. And they can be, of course, very easily swayed to fall into a different sphere if you are challenged. So that is something that we need to keep in mind. And now we do have, as I mentioned, a lot of nations in our sphere. I'm gonna again try to make sure that they remain our sphere members for as long as I can, and I will try to expand on it. But who knows how that's gonna go, because when you look at our score, we are the 6th most prominent world power at this point, but we are in no way destined to stay there at this trajectory that we're on. Because when you look, we have a decent amount of prestige, but we're one of the 2 major powers together with Kingdom of Spain who have no industrial power. And while we have a decent military power, that is in no way a guarantee of our status, unless we can get our industry in order very quickly, which we most likely won't be due to the setup that we are facing at the start of the game. We might as well fall out of this prestigious club very quickly. So we'll see how that's gonna go. So, you know, the amount of puppets that we have is in the no... sorry, not puppets. Sphere members. Damn, this is gonna be annoying, and I apologize in advance for all of the mistakes that I'm gonna do. So please feel free to ask questions or clarify if I mess this one up. But yeah, if we fall out of this prestigious cup, it's gonna be a big disaster for us, but it might be inevitable. We'll just see. I mean, the land and the prestige could help us greatly, you know. That could keep us in there. Same with military power, but industrially, we are going to fall behind. I mean, we are already behind, so what am I saying? But we're gonna keep behind for quite some time, if not through the entire game, which was the bane of the Ottoman Empire for, you know, its historical path as well. Anyway, so diplomatically, we discussed we're gonna focus on a war with Tripoli and Soran in the very beginning. We're gonna try to get them back, but we'll have constant uprisings and revolts. I'm pretty sure about that because that's how it historically went. And unfortunately, there is a lot of realism in this mod, more than I would maybe appreciate in the long run. But we'll see. Again, I want to get our sphere expanded, so Greece and some other nations are going to get into it. What I'm actually going to do here is... Yes, I can do it like this. So we're going to put small amount of influence on all of our existing sphere members. We don't really have that much power, to be quite honest, but I'm gonna make sure that they get at least a little bit of influence each day, so that we are prepared to defend them. And I'm gonna try to start getting as much as I can into Greece. The influence is very bad for us. We're not gaining a lot, and they are already friendly with everyone apart from us. We're hostile. I mean, they're neutral with 3 of the great powers, but... no, the situation is not ideal, but we'll see. We'll see. Actually, I think... can we... I mean, we could already increase relations with them. So let's do that. We'll try to sway them. Because I don't want to... you know, I don't want Greece to fall into other sphere of influence and be swayed to someone else's sphere. We would like to ideally have them under our control. Sorry for the little skip. as I was trying to explain before my workmate called me, we're gonna do our best to keep Greece in our sphere and maybe even ally with them. I don't really want them to fall under someone else's influence if at all possible. There's also all of these micro states when we, are dealing with the map. I don't have exact policy against these. They are mostly guaranteed from what I understood, but we'll see if we can somehow deal with them as the time is going to advance. I mean, by the way, these nations are not made up. Like the monastic republic of, is it Athos? I think it's Athos. Yeah, monastic republic of Athos actually existed, so you can check it out. It's really cool. Anyway, that goes as far as diplomacy that we're gonna mention right now. And now let's look at the next best thing, technology. So we're not really looking very good when it comes to technology. We don't really have any industrial tech. I mean, we get two, but that's not much. We have free societal tech, we have free economy tech, we have 2 naval, and we have 4 army ones. Now, this is a bit difficult to justify, because there is, from what I understand, the best way, in air quotes, way how you should go about your technology. But what I'm gonna do here is we are going to start with medicine. The reason why we're gonna do that is because it boosts your population gain. We currently have an adult population of 6.18 million, and I would like to get it as high as possible because it's gonna be very important for the industrialization. Now, medicine itself doesn't give us any boost to population growth, but it unlocks a lot of discoveries that we can get, and those do increase the population growth, even if by a little. Altogether, they give you a huge bonuses, and the same thing happens, for example, later on for inorganic chemistry, though I believe it is in much lower. Yeah, there's a pop growth here and some other ones. I mean, it even prophylactics. Interesting, those lower population growth. But yeah, medicine is really important for your population growth. You can see there's a ton of discoveries that can help with that. And population is going to be super important for us. Not only for the expected massive wars that we will be involved in, but also for the industry itself. So medicine is going to be my first choice, and I'm going to start researching that right now. After that, we are going to switch to positivism, because that one helps great with education efficiency and helps with university max level. And it also gives additional possible discoveries, which helps with educational efficiency. And that's going to be really important, because you get research points based on your education. And we are already getting massive penalties from Islamic law, autocracy, and very hard difficulty. So the literacy that comes as an education, basically, being so low at 7.6% is our biggest drag for the future. So increasing education is going to be super important, and that's where positivism, and maybe even to a certain level functionalism, comes to play. It's going to be super hard to get them early on, but positivism we're going to get, and functionalism as soon as possible, because making our people a little bit more educated is going to be a big goal for us right off the bat. However, as I said, we're going to go with medicine, then positivism, and functionalism is just, an outlook for us. Because what I think we're going to go with next, and this already gets a little bit fuzzy, we'll have to see, but I would like to go. I mean, there's a couple of options here. Stock exchange would be a good one, because it gives tax efficiency, so we could get more money. Or we could go with. There's a lot of options here. I like the ad hoc banknote printing because it gives administrative efficiency and again tax efficiency as well. So these two would be on my prime list. However, there is also an option here that we're just gonna go straight up to army, because there is a couple of things that we need here. One of them being a military staff system, which allows us to get the Kirisa, Dragoon, and Hussar. There's also army professionalism, which would help us with military tactics and morale. Or we could straight up go with guns and blazing. This is a segue into our military situation, which is probably the worst thing at the very start. Now, on paper, we look fairly good. We have 45,000 men out of the 60,000 possible brigades that we can field. However, we will have to start right off the bat with a massive military reform. Actually, not right off the bat, but once we suppress the Sorani Tunisian revolts. Why? Well, when you look at our armies, they have an insane amount of irregulars. They do use some other units like infantry, but the amount of irregulars and cavalry that we have around is actually quite disconcerting. We do have some cuirassiers too. Let me start by talking a little bit how the army is composed. You have irregulars and infantry. You later on get guards and engineers as the infantry units. You have cavalry, you have dragoons, cuirassiers, and hussars. You have artillery and later on tanks, and you then later on, or in the very late stage, get aeroplanes. Now, we have to get rid of all of the irregulars. Those are just trash, and they are just cannon fodder that is horrifyingly bad, so we're gonna try to avoid it as much as possible. So all of our units needs to be infantry when it comes to frontline units. Cavalry itself is not really good either, and we need to switch it to hussars when possible, which is where is it army professionalism or the military staff system? Military staff system comes into play. So that will allow us to get the option to get hussars, and we can then put them instead of cavalry. The way the game plays is that the cavalry basically is used for one and one thing only in your armies, and that is reconnaissance, which is used to negate the dig-in bonus of the enemy armies. And as you can see, the hussars have reconnaissance 2, while cavalry have reconnaissance 1, but their stats are much worse compared to regular infantry. Now, I do a little bit of non-optimal thing, but for roleplay reasons, I like to have each one of my armies comprised of 6 units. Well, actually, no, not 6 units. 4 units of infantry or frontline infantry, 4 units of artillery, and 2 units of cavalry. One of those being regular cavalry, later on hussars, and one of them being cuirassiers, because cuirassiers actually have pretty decent stats. That's not optimal, but I like to have it composed as that, because the hussars give a decent amount of reconnaissance, and I like dragoons, the cuirassiers, because they have a decent stats and decent maneuver. We also have artillery, and later on I switch one of the units of cavalry for engineers, or I create stacks of not 10 but not 30,000 or 10 units, but 60,000, and I have 3 units of cavalry and 1 of engineers. Now, the issue that we have is also that we are not only having a lot of these irregular units that are terrible in combat, but we also are getting attrition where they are located, and many of these cannot be supported. Now, each one of our military pops can support 1 or more units, and some of the units that we have in the field currently cannot be supported properly by the population that we have. So not only do we have to get rid of irregulars and reform our armies, we are currently not able to support larger armies than 30k in many cases, but we also have them dragged or recruited from population that is not able to support these and cannot replenish them in the case of casualties. So the situation is, completely screwed and will require us to rework it massively. Now, if you're not very familiar with the population and how it works, you don't really need to learn all of the details, but you can see, I guess the military screen might be a little bit better for this. You have actual populations that can support brigades. And if these populations grow to be strong enough, like for example, in this case, the population has 3,060 people and can support 2 brigades. So we could pull 2 full units out of this one. Sometimes you can see that the population, as it takes casualties, I don't know if we can... Well, we can see here, for example, that these guys took so many casualties, or actually the population is so low that it cannot properly support this unit, and thus this unit, if it incurs casualties, will not get reinforced, and that's not something what we want. Now, as the populations grow, you get access to more units, but in this case, we need to get rid of the unfavorable one, and ideally have all of our units, dragged or drafted from populations that can support them. Now, we do have a decent amount of armies. I'm not gonna say that we don't, but we'll need to reform them. I would like to have 4 armies of 30,000 men and 4 armies of 15,000 men. We're gonna strategically place them around the coast so that we can actually move them around and have them ready to be reformed into bigger stacks in case we get into war with someone like Russia. Damn, I spent so much time talking about military and I'm not even knowing if that makes sense to you guys or... but yeah, military is going to be a big reform after the war. Now, the rest of it is going to be a little bit of a breeze. Let's look at production just now. We don't really have any factories. I plan to build some because we are allowed to do that under the reactionary government, but we don't have any population to actually work in these factories for now. But if we do eventually, I'm probably gonna get some clipper or textile industries. Those are really good, or maybe canning in the beginning. They could be profitable. We're gonna subsidize all of those, but we'll see when and if we can actually even build those. When it comes to the things that we are producing, we have a wide range of items being produced by our artisan and workers. And most notable, we have a pretty decent production of wool, which is about 8%, 6 to 8% of the overall world market. And I think there was something else. Yeah, we do produce a little bit of silk, which is interesting. And we had a lot of, yes, we have a lot of sulfur, which is kind of interesting. Almost 10% of the world production. We also have a lot of metals, which is kind of good. And we do have some precious goods as well, which will pay us in money, actually. And we produce a lot of consumer goods, but there's really not much to be talking about at this point. I'll have to check it out later on, but the production doesn't seem anything to be, too crazy about. I really just know that we produce a lot of wool from what I checked, and sulfur, which can give us some kind of edge on the world market. But we'll see how the situation in the world is gonna change under the mods dictates. Now, when we look at our budget, we're already in a huge deficit coming from the fact that we are at war. We don't really have the taxes calculated, and we're paying a huge amount for the national stockpile. How I do this is, again, for roleplay reasons, I actually lower the taxes a lot here. I usually have the upper class pay 40, middle class pay 35, and lower class pay 30 in the beginning, and then I play with it, looking at how well they do or how poorly they fare. You can see that you have various things here, like some of our population is getting everyday needs, some is getting basic needs, some are getting basic needs partially fulfilled, and you even have probably, I don't know if I can hover over it, but there's a red here somewhere. It's going to pop up once we unpause the game, which means that they are not getting any needs at all. Now, this has a huge impact on the game itself because the pops have a very intricate system of promotions and demotions. Now, your populations can, for example, promote to artisans, meaning that I don't know, you have laborers here, which are like the lowest of the low when it comes to workers. And if they have all of their needs, or some of the, I think, basic needs or everyday needs fulfilled, there is a certain chance that they will, based on education and your societal laws and everything, and the taxes, promote to the middle class, to artisans. And from there, they can, under certain circumstances, promote to landowners or capitalists. Again, I'm very simplifying the system for you. If they don't have their needs, for example, if you're in the middle class and the artisans wouldn't have their needs fulfilled, they will, to a certain degree, demote to lower levels. And I think from these lower levels, they can also demote to slaves and serfs. So the system is complicated. I don't know every nick and detail of it, but it is in your best interest to not overtax your population too much so that they can promote, especially if we're trying to focus on literacy and trying to promote the growth of the population. So it is great to have, artisans and intellectuals and officers, stuff like that, because that is very much needed for the daily run of your empire. Now, I mean, you will never have everyone in middle class. There will always be most of your people in the lower class, but even in the classes themselves, there is a certain societal mobility, so you can get a lot of soldiers, a lot of craftsmen, stuff like that. We'll see about how these pops will do. Now, many of you will probably know this, but just as an add-on to that, you have each of the population actually here as a separate, or each. How would I explain to those of you that don't know what Victoria looks like? Okay, let's look at, for example, the intellectuals. Intellectuals are distributed per province, religion, culture, and I think also... No, just like that. So you have them separated. For example, if you look at the location, so in Iskandar we have three intellectual population types. We have Armenian, Turkish, and Greek, and they each have a different religion. So you can track your population down to individual based on their culture, location, type, and religion. It's insanely complicated, and these guys move around, they promote, demote based on the needs. It's really complex, and sometimes you will see me dive into it looking at what kind of population we have, but you have these really nice stats in the upper part, which show you what your population is like, what's their general workforce split, what's their cultures. You can see that unfortunately we have way too many cultures, which is going to cause us a lot of trouble down the line. We have a ton of religions as well, a ton of dominant issues and ideology. We're basically not doing good, because the more fractured these pie charts are, the more fractured your population is, and the more likely they are to revolt or push for various agenda, become unruly, all that fun part. Now, we do have a couple of ways how to influence this. We have national focuses, which allow you to actually influence what you want to do with your population through national focuses. And there is you can promote various pop types. You can focus on production. You can focus on party loyalty or immigration, depending on that. For roleplay reason, again, I'm going to put one of the focuses on our capital, and I'm going to want them to encourage intellectuals. And I'm also going to do the same thing for Ankara, which is our most populous province at this point. Now, by province, I mean the overall region. You actually have individual places here. You can see it as that. When we look at Ankara, you can see that it is here as an area, but other places fall into the area as well. Now, focusing on intellectuals will help us with the literacy, because when there's more intellectuals, you get a higher growth of education as well, and that is our focus here. So I think that actually covers all of the beginning parts. We went through military, diplomacy, trade. Well, actually, we haven't really talked about trade, but trade is to a certain amount completely automated. Oh, I haven't set up the budget. I apologize. I just set the taxes. We're actually going to lower the national stockpile to a minimum for now, which is going to save us a lot of cost. But we're gonna up the educational and administration costs to max, because again, education depends on how the education is a pay to your intellectuals, and if they have needs and they're promoted pop through your education slider, more of them are gonna come, which will in effect educate your population more, and you are going to get more research points, which then make your life easier. Social spending, we're not spending anything on wages or anything else, so we're fine there. And military spending, I'm going to kill it down the line, but for now we're going to keep it as it is right now, because we are at war. So, okay, that kind of covers the basic setup of our empire. I hope I explained, I think I over-explained a lot of this stuff, but I'm hoping some of you that are a little bit more rusty on Victoria too, or that don't know all the mechanics, will have a little bit more understanding on what's going on. Basically, while EU4 is empire-centric, Victoria 2 is population-centric and production-centric. So all of it comes down to the individual pops and how you promote them. As I mentioned before, we have a lot of military pops, but many of them, where's the military guys? Is there officers? Oh, here. So you see them, we have a ton of these, many of them very small, but we'll try to promote military as much as we can down the line, because having a strong military population will allow us to actually field big armies. But the technology can really make or fall your armies, so this is going to be a big one. I completely expect us to go through the army and navy technologies first, and then our society, economy, and industry is going to be lagging behind, because we're going to be constantly defending against Austria, Russia, and internal upheavals. But we'll see. Anyway, that's all for this introductory episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, I apologize if it's a little bit confusing, but I try to cover all of our bases. And in the next one, we're going to start moving our armies. We're going to try to suppress the Tripolitanian? Damn, that's a... Yeah, Tripolitanian revolt, and the Sorani revolt, yes. And then once those are suppressed, we're gonna try to focus heavily on restructuring our military and setting up to a place where we're gonna be happy with it, after which we are gonna focus more on technology, budget, production, and maybe even playing with our first factories. But yeah, we don't have railroads, we don't have anything. This is just gonna be a nightmare. A very hard nightmare at that. Anyway, see you in the next one.